What's up? Howdy. It is time for ACC Baseball Etc. presented by Pitch Logic, the system used by players, coaches, scouts, and instructors at all levels of play, from youth leagues to the big leagues. The easy-to-use and affordable technology makes the platform accessible to every player at every level. All the metrics and features used at the highest level. You can go to pitchlogic.com for more information. I'm Daron Vaught. Danny Graves is back in the house. That's how you know the season's coming up soon, is that we've got Gravy here. We're going to talk preseason, sort of a preview and predictions episode here, Gravy. And for those listening, if you are a fan of NC State, Miami, or Florida State, don't worry. We will continue our preseason conversations. We're going to talk to all three head coaches of those teams before the season gets started. But we had it factored in to do this preview episode anyways, and due to some scheduling stuff, we're just dropping it now instead of immediately before the season starts. Gravy, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so good. This is so bizarre because I know I haven't been on in quite some time. So my voice is very well rested. Well, I guess kind of well rested because I do a lot of screaming at hockey with my son. But so you talk about what we're doing today, all these previews and the predictions. Just to remind everybody, it's not going to come out the way that we predict it. It never does, but it's just what we think. And for now, it's going to sound great, right?
Yeah, I will remind people, when we started this whole thing prior to last season, I didn't call Clemson winning the conference, but if I recall, I thought they were going to be pretty good. I thought they were going to be pretty good. But then again, I think you and I both picked Miami maybe to win the conference, and that didn't happen. Yeah, just as reminders, general reminders. Yeah, we're just talking about stuff, and that's right. What happens, and hopefully you forget it by the time it happens in a way that we do not predict. All right, so hockey parenting, that's got to be. You've got, my understanding, Danny, is you got a little bit of a prodigy on your hands with your son.
That's a strong word. the prodigy is very strong, but he's a really good hockey player. He's 8. He plays on the 10U league, and he's a lot bigger than most of the 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds out there. And he does this morning skate, Daron, like at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we're up Monday through Thursday, up at 4:30, take him. He does his skate, and then he goes to school right after. But it's done wonders for him. He scored 4 goals in the game yesterday. They won 8-5. Dude, he just, like, I don't know, something clicked, and he was a defenseman for so long because he's got some meat on him and he uses his body. So there was a couple breakaways. I told him, I said, even though the coaches say stay back on defense, just play defense, I said, if you have the puck and you see open ice, go, because defensemen in the NHL, they score too. Like, you can't, you don't just sit there and hold the puck. So he did that a couple times, and they moved him to a wing, and dude, he took off. Like, now he's one of the faster skaters, and then he's aggressive, he's physical. It's pretty amazing, man. And I mic'd him up, so I'm gonna eventually put some footage out there. But micing him up, it was so awesome. Like, the sounds and the noises that he makes. Oh, awesome. So awesome.
All right. So I have to know, before we move on to ACC baseball, when he put his third in the back of the net, did you toss the cap out there?
Well,
is that something they allow at that level?
Well, whether they allow it or not, I don't know. But there's a big net in front of the stands, so there's no way we could have got the hats out there. But I wanted to, and he does have a little celebration. He does the little Connor Bedard where he just throws his hands up and skates around in circles until his teammates come up and hug him. And I said, dude, the celebration is great, but why that? He's like, well, because sometimes I shoot it like Connor Bedard. I'm like, oh, here we go. Now he thinks he's Connor Bedard already.
I'll tell you what, I like it because it involves the teammates, right? It's not necessarily like a me monster celebration, because it is dependent on the teammates. So it's got my stamp of approval for that.
Thank you. Yeah. And you know what was big too, when one of his teammates scored yesterday, he did the same thing. And skated over to his teammate that way. So it's not like just his thing. He does it for every goal while he's out there. Yeah.
Nice.
It's pretty exciting, man. I'm such a hockey nerd. It's ridiculous.
I love it, man. Like we've talked about the Canes and my love for the Carolina Hurricanes on this show. So like it as a fan and a spectator is now my second favorite sport by a lot next to baseball. So I love it. I just think it's the coolest thing ever that rather than having a baseball kid where you're traveling him around doing that circuit, which would also be awesome. You're doing the same, but with hockey.
Yeah. Well, I've always said that my kids are going to do what they want to do. I'm not going to make them play baseball. I get it that when you're young, baseball is very boring because you just sit around and nothing happens. So he tried it once. He tried soccer, and then he wanted to play hockey. He started playing hockey. The best part about it, Daron, is I don't have to sit out in the bleachers sweating my butt off in Texas watching him play baseball or soccer.
True.
I get to sit in the ice cold arena at the ice rink. That's the best part.
Love that.
Yeah.
All right. So with our previews and predictions, we've got some categories that we're going to go through, and you and I are going to name names and teams and all that fun stuff that we normally do at the beginning of a season. I want to start though, Danny. Published a couple of days ago on the ACC's website is the preseason coaches poll for ACC baseball. And there's some predictable stuff in here, but I just kind of want to dig through this. All right.
Yeah.
10 first place votes for Wake Forest, the number one preseason team in the country. Go figure.
They got robbed.
Right. 10 even of 14 coaches. I was about to say it. That even seems kind of low, but fine. Understandable. 10 of the 14 Wake Forest first place votes. All right. There's only one other team in here that had more than one first place vote.
Mm-hmm.
The North Carolina Tar Heels received 2 first place votes and then 1 apiece for Clemson and Virginia. North Carolina, according to ACC Baseball's coaches, the second most likely team to win the conference. Your thoughts?
Well, let me just say this first. This poll matters a lot because these 14 coaches are the ones that see each other more than D1, more than Perfect Game, more than Baseball America, all these other outlets. These coaches see each other more. They know each other's teams more than anybody. But at the same time, no disrespect to North Carolina because I think they're a World Series caliber team. But I need to know from you, since you talked to Scott Forbes for quite a bit, what is going to make them so much better this year, besides the fact that Vance Honeycutt is healthy? I know that Luke Stevenson is a stud coming in. What is so impressive about North Carolina?
I think it's going to be the lineup. And I think Honeycutt being healthy matters a lot to other coaches because they're the ones who have to try to pitch around him. That matters. And they've got other capable hitters who really broke out last year that are going to be around him in the lineup. I have all the faith in the world in their lineup. North Carolina is going to put up a lot of runs. Alberto Osuna is healthy and back for yet another season. So he potentially, and I know we said it last year when he was coming back from the hamate injury, if he can return to 20 home run season form is just another piece for them in the middle of that lineup that's just going to make it even more potent. And they're going to have guys I don't think there's going to be a spot every day for Johnny Castagnazzi, who has seen great success in this league. I don't think there's going to be a spot necessarily every day for Hunter Stokely, who at times last year seemed like their best day in and day out hitter and a really capable defensive first baseman.
Right.
It's a deep, deep, deep lineup. And they've added some things in the pitching staff that are cause for encouragement, although that was the Achilles heel. Oddly enough, it has sort of been the Achilles heel since Scott Forbes became the head coach of this team. A former pitching coach himself. It's part of the code that they just haven't been able to crack in their pursuit of another trip to Omaha. But I think they feel good about it, or at least they did up until, and my curiosity, sort of peaks even more with this preseason poll, wondering, were these votes turned in before we knew that Jake Knapp was out for the year with a UCL injury? Because that was, by all accounts, going to be the Friday starter for the Tar Heels. And if you lose him, sure, you might have other pieces that you like and that you're looking forward to having in your pitching staff. But man, that's a little too much uncertainty. It's a little too much uncertainty for me to just be like, you know what? The number one team in the country is in this conference, but boom, here's my stamp. North Carolina is gonna win the whole shebang. So I get it. I understand a lot of the reasons why those two votes went North Carolina's way, but I also am having trouble understanding why them and not Clemson or Virginia or Duke, even, who's going to have lineup questions of their own. They're sort of the flip-flop of North Carolina. It's really interesting to me that the Tar Heels were deemed the second most likely team to win it.
So it probably was voted on before the verdict on Jake Knapp. It had to have been, right? Because you lose your Friday starter, even if you have other guys that you're going to have in that rotation that are solid arms, you lose your number one guy, and very rarely does it work out the way that you want it to, except if you're the Texas Rangers. They lose DeGrom, they still end up winning the World Series, but they make trades. You can't do that in college during the season. So you got two freshmen coming in that they are talking about being in the rotation or being weekend starters. Well, now they're going to have to, one of those guys or Shea Sprague, I see coming in from Elon. He might have to be the Friday night starter when was planning on being a 2, 3, or 4 guy. So now everybody's coming up and they have to step in roles that they weren't expected to be in with Jake Knapp going down. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I do, listening to you talk to Coach Forbes about their lineup, a lot of potential there. And he said it, you said it. It's a great problem to have when you just don't know who's going to hit where yet. You can hit so many guys in different spots. And I thought it was funny. He mentioned Osuna maybe being a Kyle Schwarber. Probably not going to happen. He says it's probably not going to happen, but how funny would that be? That would be hysterical. If he didn't strike out so much and walk more, he could be. Then you got a 20 homer guy in the leadoff spot. But anyways, I just think this lineup, there's so much that he can do with it. You could put Honeycutt anywhere in the top 4 or 5, and it's trouble for the opposing pitching staff.
Yeah. With that being said, let's segue perfectly, by the way, segue into our first topic, which is just simply who do you think is going to win the ACC? And by this, I mean, it's kind of hard to predict the ACC Baseball Championship champion because of the tournament setting. So I don't know. Maybe, I don't know how I mean it. Maybe take it however you want, right? Who's going to be the best team throughout the regular season? Who has the best shot to win in a tournament setting? However you want to answer this.
I'm not going to answer it and who's going to win the ACC championship, because
I thought you might say that.
Yeah, we know that how that tournament works, and it's a great tournament, but sometimes teams just don't really care if they win it or not, right? Sure. So what's the overall question? Who do I think is going to be the best team in the ACC?
Yeah. If that's how you heard it come out of my mouth, sure. Who's going to be the best team? Yeah,
Wake Forest, hands down. I think most people would agree with that. It's not rocket science that they're going to have the best pitching staff in the country again. And I believe their lineup is still very stacked, even with losing Brock Wilken. They got Nicky Nukes, one of the best hitters in all of college baseball, still there, probably a top 3 or 4 pick in the draft coming up this year. So the arms that they added Chase Burns, they added your boy Seaver King in the outfield, who I cannot wait to see. They're loaded. So to me, that's an easy answer. And that's no disrespect, again, to any of the 13 other teams. There's some really good teams, obviously, in this conference, and probably going to be multiple teams that are making it to Omaha. But at this very moment, Wake Forest on paper is the best team in the ACC and in the country.
Yeah, I agree. Wake Forest is I'm not an idiot. Wake Forest is the best team in the conference, right? And they I think should be. I think they at times might run into more problems scoring runs than they did a season ago. Nick Kurtz being back is great. I think Merrick Houston is going to have a huge breakout season as their shortstop. The word out of the fall and preseason camp is that he's a leaps and bounds better offensive player. And in fact, Tom Walter was raving about him in the sense that, hey, he needs to be on Team USA's radar for this coming summer if this coming season goes the way that he thinks it's going to for Merrick. So that's a net positive in one of the positional spots for them. Jake Reinisch has apparently, come back to form after being hurt last year. That's a good solid bat. If you listened to our preseason in conversation with Tom Walter, that there at least initially was some concern for the lineup, how to protect Kurtz, how to get the most out of the other spots in the lineup. That said, they're still going to be really good. Adam Tellier is a transfer who's going to be really productive for them as well. Like they're still going to be really good. I just have such a hard time envisioning them dropping a series with, Josh Hartle going on Friday, Chase Burns going on Saturday, and then Sunday you got Michael Massey. And Massey again played for Team USA over the summer, and it's like a great pitcher, and would be the Friday guy literally anywhere else in the country. It's hard to imagine them dropping a single series in the ACC, although it can happen.
It can happen, of course.
I would argue it probably will. Like they are more likely to drop one than to just go undefeated in series play.
Well, because of the parity in the ACC.
Yeah, there's a lot of good teams. So yes, they're the best team. I do think Virginia is going to be really, really good, though. I think Virginia is, to me, the coaches deemed North Carolina the second most likely to win it. I think Virginia is the second most likely team to win the ACC.
Okay, and meaning, like, what's your biggest piece on that? Brian O'Connor.
Yes, but also, Jack O'Connor, no relation, was a really good pitcher as a freshman for them last year. They find a way, and in a year that they've actually I know no Kyle Teal, no Jake Geloff, they're still returning a lot of talent. I think Ethan Anderson, could have an ACC Player of the Year type season. He's going to be given some chances to catch.
Just so you know, not to interrupt, but that was going to be my not so obvious player to watch, because I know nobody is obviously besides you now is checking out Ethan Anderson. This dude is so good under the radar. Nobody talked about him last year. He had 375 with 15 bombs. And all we talked about is Teal and Geloff.
Yeah. Yep. And there are others in that lineup. We'll
Casey Salke is legit.
Yep. Let's dog ear that page, because we do have a not so obvious player to watch category that we're going to talk about.
Rewind. Go ahead.
We can bring EA back up, because I do want to talk about him. Okay. Jay Woolfolk is a guy who was a two-sport star for them, a quarterback on the football team, in addition to being their back-end guy. As a pitcher, he is now 100% committed to baseball. The expectation is he's going to be a weekend starter, and that changes things. That's a huge add by subtraction, if that makes sense. He takes one sport out of his life, and it's the addition by subtraction there. I think Woolfolk is going to have a great season if he's given that chance to be a weekend starter. I just think the world of Brian O'Connor. I think the world of that program. And I really, really like the pieces they have coming back. So I think they've got a chance to be the best team in the conference.
That's interesting what they're doing with Woolfolk, because for so many times last year, like in the back of my mind, he has the mentality, the closer's mentality, right? Obviously the toughness there, being a college quarterback and being able to handle the pressure. But I felt like his stuff, his repertoire was more for a starter, because you know, he would come in and throw hard, but he's got other pitches that he could throw for strikes, but he really couldn't do it much. You know, that last inning, you come in, you got to get after it. Now putting him in the rotation, being able to use his stuff, man, that's going to be huge. Huge for this rotation here. Huge for Virginia, man. I love this. I had no idea until you just mentioned that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about them. I'm excited about him. We do have a category. This is the sort of obvious players to watch. We've already mentioned several that probably fit in. Players you are most excited to watch this year?
I'm going to hurt some feelings here because, you know, the last couple of years I've had man crushes on some of these dudes. And Vance Honeycutt 2 years ago, I can't wait to see him healthy. He's bigger and stronger, and just can't imagine him getting better than he already was. But, you know, Coach Forbes says he's healthy and ready to go. I'm excited to see what kind of numbers he puts up, regardless of where he hits in the lineup. Nicky Nukes, I can't wait to see him raking again. Gosh, there's so many good players. Jacob Cozart.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see him. Man, this conference. If I had to name one, I'd say Vance Honeycutt.
Yeah.
I love Nicky Nukes probably more than anybody in this conference, but Vance Honeycutt is special, dude. He's something about him. Just him being in the lineup. If he goes 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts in 5 straight games, him being in the lineup, it still changes the lineup, because the opposing pitching staff still has to pitch to him like he's going to be a dangerous guy, you know, that he's going to do some damage. Even if he's 0 for 4, that 5th at bat, he still could beat you, you know, and just what he does to a lineup and to a strategy for opposing teams is unheard of.
Yeah. Not to mention if he gets on base. Someone we have not mentioned, and I'm surprised you didn't there, is the guy who took the Dom Patelli throne as my favorite player in the ACC before we knew he was as good as he was last year. When I saw him in person at Clemson, Cam Cannarella. I mean, there were rumblings of him maybe getting swept away in the transfer portal. He stays at Clemson, the number 4 overall national seed from last year's tournament. Another season under the tutelage of Eric Bakich. Cam could have another big season. I'm going to go with a teammate of Cam's, and I mentioned Jay Woolfolk as being a former 2-sport guy who is committing solely to baseball.
I know where you're going with this.
Clemson's got another one of those guys. Will Taylor was already a very serviceable, good, above average, well above average ACC player. He is now locked in on baseball. I think with his athleticism, narrowing his focus could turn him into, and I'm probably going to say this a handful of times, could turn him into, because I've already said it about EA at Virginia, could turn him into a ACC Player of the Year type guy. It just kind of depends on how certain chips fall, but I think he's primed to have a really, really good season at Clemson. So those are 2 for me that I'm really excited to see. Trying to think if there's any more. Devin Obie at Duke had a really good summer at the Cape, and he's kind of just been like on the fringe of being an everyday guy for Duke for so long, a couple of years now, and he looks to be their you know, in the driver's seat to have their everyday spot in center field. That's a guy I'm looking forward to seeing as well. this year. Yeah, so that, I mean, that's kind of the top of the list, including the guys you said for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many guys. Of course, Seaver King, I can't wait to see him. I mentioned that already.
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely one that people are going to want to see after what he did at a smaller school. I know there's no question that he can do it at a big school, and it's going to be exciting to watch for sure. Yeah, so many guys, man. You can look up and down the list of players to watch from our man Aaron Fitt, and it's just pretty amazing. This conference gets better and better, Daron.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing too about having these conversations with the coaches in the preseason. And granted, like they're in positions where they kind of have to see the best in everything. But man, like every team has encouraging things happening. I was struck by John Sheff at Virginia Tech talking about how similar this team feels to his
2 years ago.
to 2022, 45 wins, a super regional. And I joked with him even in that conversation, like, oh, okay, so you're guaranteeing 45 wins in a super regional. That's what it sounds like to me. And he's like, no. But he feels kind of the same way because of the perception and just sort of the way certain pieces are coming together and players are progressing from within the program. So yeah, like every team's got a lot to be excited about. Is there anybody else? You mentioned Ethan Anderson at Virginia. On the not so obvious players to watch list that you're excited to see. Is there anybody else there? Or do you just want to wax poetic more about EA? Because I love the kid too.
Yeah. I originally thought maybe I would go with Casey Salke because I don't think he gets enough credit either for how good he is. He's so solid. Like he's one of those, just a baseball guy. He's not going to hit 350 with 25 jacks and steal 30 bases, but he's going to get it done. He's the guy that's going to be consistent day in and day out. But then I remembered that Ethan Anderson is back. And he just quietly just stays under the radar. Nobody knows how good he is. Well, I shouldn't say nobody knows. We obviously know how good he is, but he's not talked about enough. And is he going to catch this year?
He's going to be at least part-time. He will be given opportunities to catch is the word coming out of Virginia.
It's funny because when Kyle Teal was a freshman, he was in the outfield, and I had no idea that he was a catcher before he got to Virginia. And then when they put him behind the plate his sophomore year, I'm like, no, what are they doing? This kid he's such a great outfielder. And then he becomes one of the best catchers in college baseball. So I'll never question Coach O'Connor on his moves with these kids because whatever he does, it works.
Yeah, and like the main thing is you just get athletes and
yeah.
Anderson similarly, primarily a catcher until he got to Virginia, where he arrives early. Remember, I mean, he was, I think, a 17-year-old in the starting lineup as a freshman for Virginia. So, like, he's sort of conditioned in a way that not many college baseball players are to assume this role from a first-round pick in Kyle Teal, a two-time collegiate national team guy for Team USA. I think the world of EA and think he's going to have a great season. I've got a name for you.
Yeah. What do you got?
Let's go up to Chestnut Hill at BC.
Okay.
Cam Leary. I think Cam Leary coming back for Boston College under new leadership, of course. Todd Interdonato makes his way there from Wofford. Interdonato likes athleticism and knows how to use it, as he did with his success in the SoCon at the head of that Wofford program that runs a lot. It's a very physical style of play. I think Interdonato and Leary are a match made in heaven. And I think Leary, who already was a very, very good player to this point in his career, could break out in a big way for Boston College, who as a team has a lot coming back. So they generally interest me, but Cam Leary is one of my not as obvious players to watch.
So I'll stay there in Chestnut Hill too and throw one at you. Barry Walsh.
Yeah.
Okay? Don't sleep on Barry Walsh either. This dude, towards the end of the season, it almost felt like they could not get him out.
Yeah.
He ends up the season with 8 homers and 14 steals. His numbers could be so much better. It's almost like he's the spark sometimes. When he started getting going, the rest of the team started getting going. I love this dude. Don't sleep on Barry Walsh.
That's a good one too. And I mean, on the pitching staff side, while we just stay there with BC, my next question was going to be dark horse teams, and we can define that however we want, right? Like, who's a dark horse team to win the ACC? Who's a dark horse team to make the NCAA tournament out of the ACC? I think there are
have a better year than they had before, we could say,
right? Because there are a couple of ripe candidates for that, right? BC's a team that had a very good season a year ago. Mike Gambino, one of our favorites, departs for the Big Ten. I joked with him about it over the summer when I saw him in Cary. He was doing some Team USA stuff, and I was like, "Wait, we let Big Ten coaches in here now? What are we doing?" He enjoyed that.
He probably said, "Well, you let Danny Graves come on the show with you?"
Yeah, right.
Always trying to find a way to rip me, so I'm good with it.
But as much as we love Mike, it was a lot about the players that were there, and there's been a culture that's been built at BC.
100%.
That is, it's not push start for Todd Interdonato. He's still got to do some coaching, but he inherited a lot of key pieces to that team, including like John West on the pitching side, and Henry Leaks around as their pitcher development guy now. So like there's a cultural thing where they've got former players on staff, and I'm really excited for Interdonato and for that program to sort of take this next step, right? Because it feels different if you can retain it, the level of success through two coaches, 2 coaching staffs. You know what? You played for 2 at Miami under 2 head coaches. So like you're the perfect person to talk about this.
So I played for 3, actually. My freshman year, Ron Frazier. My sophomore year, Brad Kelly. Junior year, Jim Morris. So here's what I learned. And I hadn't had a chance to meet Todd Interdonato yet. I'm sure he's an awesome guy. But what I learned is, the Ron Frazier era, he built that program. He built the culture of college baseball and Coral Gables down there. Everything was Ron Frazier. When Brad Kelly came in, and we had a lot of guys returning still. We lost some people to the draft, but we still had players coming back. I think where Brad Kelly got lost is he tried to change the culture overnight and basically tried to turn the Ron Frazier era into the Brad Kelly era, like immediately. And I think that was a mistake. That was a huge mistake, especially with the alumni, with the boosters, and just the city itself. Like you can't just try to shut down the Ron Frazier era when you're coming in here and trying to make a name for yourself. Now, moving along, he gets fired that year. We get Jim Morris the next year. He leaves Georgia Tech, who was the #1 team in the country. They had Jason Varitek, Nomar Garcia-Parra, Jay Payton, all first rounders. Brad Rigby, I think was a second round pick that year. He left Georgia Tech to come to Miami. Immediately, his first thing that he told us was, "This is y'all's team. This is your team. I'm just here." And he pretty much just kind of, he was a great head coach. He coached us and taught us the game and did this and that, but he kind of just sat back and let us do our thing. So, and it wasn't like the inmates running the asylum or anything. It was, this is the culture that these guys had with Ron Frazier. So let's try to continue that. And then I'll gradually take over and it's going to be my era, which it turned into Jim Morris's era. And now he's going into the Hall of Fame. So I think for Coach Interdonato, the biggest thing was coming in, you got these players that loved Coach Gambino. So don't try to change too much of the culture. maybe change the style of play, whatever your style of play is. But I think if you keep that same culture, just gradually let it change, it's going to work. But I think if you try to change it immediately, people aren't going to buy in. You're going to lose your team.
Yeah, no, that's all really well said. If anyone listening has not listened to my conversation with Todd Interdonato, the first-year head coach at BC, and you found what Danny just said to be interesting, I think you'll like that, because we talked about that specific thing, right? Like how much, even specifically evaluating players, if a guy's been a starter in the previous under the previous regime for so long, obviously you don't want to overlook things that could be cause for moving them elsewhere or whatever, but you've got to factor all that stuff in.
Yeah.
And how much of it is what you see now that you're in practice with those guys, or what you saw watching their games from last year. As Todd has said, he's been through all of them. He's watched every pitch of their games.
Really?
To get to maybe with the exception of pitch by pitch, a guy he doesn't have pitching for him this year.
Right.
Every play for every player he retained at BC.
That's impressive.
He watched it and was like, I just need to get to know these guys. And so he's got sort of the running order in his head, just like Gambino would in some sense. So anyways, go check that out if you haven't listened to it. He and I had never spoken with Sean Stifler before at Notre Dame. Prior to these preseason conversations, they were the only two that I had no pre-existing relationship with. And I really enjoyed both of them. I found Interdonato's approach to jumping into a program as the new guy to be really, really fascinating, because we know we've got two new head coaches in the conference, but JD over at Miami has been there forever. So it's not the same story for him.
Right. It's kind of not new, but new.
Anything else? Any other team? Any other player come to mind? Like who?
Well, there's a player I wanted to ask you about, and I know you talked to Danny Hall. What did he say anything about Karsten Sabathia? My boy CC, his kid is the first baseman there. Is he going to play this year, or did you get into that with him?
Danny did not necessarily tell his hand to that degree. It sounded like the way he talked about Karsten, there's good chance that Sabathia is going to be maybe even an everyday guy. Danny raved about his improvement physically over this offseason, says he's gotten a lot better, had a good summer. We'll see. I'm hopeful, right? That's a guy that I saw on the USAB circuit prior to his arrival at Georgia Tech. So hopefully that would be the case. And God knows they had plenty of spots open up in that lineup. It's going to be a brand new looking lineup for them. So you would think there's a lot of opportunity for Karsten to snag a spot. So we'll see.
Ridiculous power. Like, and he's still learning how to hit. Like, it's just crazy. Yeah. And we got to get CC on here. I almost want to wait until Karsten hits a couple homers that first weekend, and then we can get CC on here.
Catch CC in a good mood. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Because I don't want to get CC on here and Karsten's not playing, and he might just be complaining about Karsten's not playing, and we'll get him in trouble. So we'll just wait.
No, I get it. I think that's the smart move. Nice. All right. Well, it's been a while since we've been able to play Hall of Name, so we're going to do this right now. Hall of Name.
I'm nervous already, dude.
So it's the part of the show where I've got a list, a collection of former teammates of Danny's, the former big league and collegiate star closer, Reds Hall of Famer, Miami Hurricanes Hall of Famer, I should mention. So I've got a list of his teammates, whether it be with Team USA in his collegiate run, with the Cleveland MLB franchise, with Cincinnati, who you spent most of your career with, the New York Mets as well in there. I name a teammate. Danny regales us with a tale of first interaction with this person, just basically the first thing that comes to mind, whatever.
Mhm.
So I'm doing this a little bit differently. Since the last time we talked in an on-air official capacity, that is, we've had some players inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
One of them began his career and ended it basically since your career ended. Does that make you feel old, Joe Mauer? You never faced Joe Mauer in a game. So like guys that came in after you have already had full careers and been inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am half a century years old, so I'm 50. So I've come to realize that there's a lot of people that are going into the Hall of Fame that weren't even born when I was playing. So, yeah, I know I'm old. I know I'm old.
However, Mauer was just one of 3 inducted. Okay.
Yeah.
Todd Helton.
Yeah.
And Adrian Beltre were both inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. I have pulled up your career numbers against both of them.
Yeah.
What do you recall about facing Todd Helton as you did it 13 times in your career?
He's probably like 9 for 13. I know he's got 2 homers off me. At least 2 homers. Is that right, 2?
So it is 2. The first time and the last time you ever faced Todd Helton, he hit home runs on.
Yeah. The first time was in Colorado. And I was so mad. Like I was cussing at him after the game. I'm like, why would you do that to your boy? I don't even know what the score was, but I was so mad that he did that. And then he's just laughing at me. But then the last time was when I was with the Mets. And it was at Shea Stadium, opposite field homer. Barely made it out too. Barely. And then I got booed off the field by the Shea faithful, which is not uncommon, but
no, it's funny you mentioned that. I was just having a conversation with a friend who's a Mets fan the other day. And we might have talked about it, not this past fall, but the fall before. I went to I went to that playoff game at not Shea, obviously this would be Citi Field, but a Mets home game. And it was the Yu Darvish Padres versus Max Scherzer Mets game of that series. And I was blown away at how ferociously Max Scherzer got booed when he came out of that game. And I went solo. I was up in New York for another reason and took the 7 line and was like, am I really just going to go vibe on my own at this playoff game? And so I ended up buying a ticket and going, and I befriended a group of Mets fans. And so I sort of got schooled as to just like, no, that's just what we do here. Yeah. Right. Like he pitched bad. He knows we're going to boo him and we're going to boo him viciously. So it was like, for me, it was just like a little jarring and sort of an indoctrination into being a temporary Mets fan for that night. So not surprising that you would, like get booed off stage like that.
The thing about Mets fans and probably New York fans, I don't know about Yankees fans. I'm sure they're the same, but like they'll boo the crap out of you until you get into the dugout. They'll stop booing, but then the next time you have a great game, they'll give you a standing ovation. So it's like, what have you done for me lately? That's what it's all about. But back to Todd Helton too. I don't know how many total hits he got, but I do know that when I broke the record for most saves in Cincinnati, he made the last out and I got the save to break it. It was a little nubber back to me.
Oh,
yeah. That may have been the only time I got him out. I don't know.
No. You got him out 6 times. He was 7 for 13, a 538 average against you.
That's pretty good.
Those 2 home runs and a double. He slugged 1077 against you for his career. But it was
I helped him get into the Hall.
You did. You really, honestly, you truly did. One starting the very first time you faced him, one of those many home runs at Coors Field. So I'm curious, what years or year did you go to the rotation for the Reds? Remind me.
2003.
Okay. Yeah. So you faced him 3 times in 99, 3 in 03. I would imagine this was maybe even in the same game in 03.
Same game. Cause I pitched against them once in that year.
Okay.
2003. Charles Johnson hit a home run off me that game, by the way. Go ahead. My former teammate.
Yeah. So Helton, the line for 2003 is he was 3 for 3 with 3 in 3 at bats. So all 3 singles against you in that.
They might have been like infield singles, Daron. He didn't really hit him very well.
They could have been. Yeah. You know what? They were. This number I'm seeing knows no different. So
right.
7 of 13 for your career, or for his career against you. The 2 home runs. And I hope he called you after he got in to thank you for your contributions to his Hall of Fame bid.
No. I don't know how to get a hold of him. I'm assuming he lives in Colorado still, but he goes dark too. Like he's an outdoorsman, so he don't talk to anybody.
Yeah, I get that. Let me know. So his former offensive coordinator at Tennessee, David Cutcliffe, became a friend for a while when he was the head football coach at Duke, because I was producing that sports talk radio show. I would maybe be able to get you in touch with him through him if you ever need to. So,
yeah.
We could actually make that happen and have some fun with, 2 of those home runs, So
yeah. Well, he'll probably say, well, I hit 350 something total, so your 2 didn't matter.
Yeah, but you needed the 3, Todd. He
needed the extra hits for sure.
Yeah. All right,
but I didn't strike him out, did I? Because he was a guy that was really hard to strike out in his career.
No,
didn't strike him out. 0
strikeouts, 13 plate appearances, 0. But you didn't walk him, and he was known to be a pretty good on base guy. So that's a positive. You never hit him with a pitch.
I never hit my friends. So.
Yeah, right. All right, let's move on to what is definitively a better line for you. Your career against Adrian Beltre, which
I owned Adrian Beltre.
Okay, so this is something that you're aware of?
Yes. I don't know how I owned him, but I did. I think he was like 2 for 16 or something.
Really close. 2 for 15.
Okay. And the 2 singles were off fastballs.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I don't know why I tried to get sneaky with the fastball. One was the last single he got off me I was with Cleveland. I don't know if he was with Seattle maybe at the time in 06. And I just thought I'd sneak a fastball by him because he knew I threw him all sliders before. And then he gets a hit. So that was his last hit off me. 2 for 15, huh? All right.
2 for 15. Do you recall any strikeouts?
I know of one for sure.
Okay.
It was a slider that was like 2 feet out of the strike zone. I don't know. There has to be more, right?
Yeah. You struck him out 6 times.
6?
And you got him to ground into a double play once in 2000. I mean, when you say owned, you did. You kind of owned Adrian Beltre, now a Hall of Famer, Adrian Beltre.
6 times?
6 times.
Oh, my gosh. I don't think I struck out anybody 6 times.
of all the lines of you versus whomever that we've revisited, that might be the best.
Yes.
And that's a first ballot Hall of Famer. You did that against. That's good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I can't say that I helped him into the Hall of Fame. Dude, I didn't know
it despite you.
Yeah. That's great. 6 times. That's more impressive than the 2 hits. Like, because I didn't strike anybody out hardly. There was a stat that somebody put on. Greg Swindell put a stat out on Randy Johnson one year, one of the World Series years or something. I think maybe 2001. He had 491 strikeouts, maybe combined regular season, postseason. I don't know, something ridiculous, all in one season. And my whole career didn't have that many strikeouts. It was ridiculous. Yeah. So one season of Randy Johnson, including playoffs, had more strikeouts than me in my career.
Nice.
So, I mean, it's
sinker slider guy. You got ground balls. You got little nubs.
Pitch to contact. That's right.
Yep. Exactly. Right on. All right. So one Hall of Famer owned you. You owned the other throughout your big league career. That is this edition of Hall of Name.
That is beautiful. Really. That's great. That is great. I love it.
Great stuff. As we mentioned, conversations still to come with the head coaches of NC State. That's Elliott Avent, one of our favorites, the head coach. newly at Miami, JD Arteaga. So obviously another one of our favorites, one of our guys. And then Link Jarrett at Florida State is going to drop in as well, to potentially bounce those guys back to form. And Louisville's another. I mean, we alluded to both of them earlier as teams that could outperform last year, and probably should. We'll see. I'm excited to see both teams, both of those teams in that case. Just excited for our conversations to round out, talking to all 14 head coaches before the season gets going.
You've done a great job.
Thank you. Appreciate it. The feedback, in all seriousness, the feedback has been awesome and like borderline overwhelming. It's cool to hear people are enjoying the show and enjoying that piece of it. So hopefully we can keep this momentum rolling throughout the season. This is our first full season under the D1 Baseball Podcast Network umbrella. So we've got some fun things planned, and should be a good year because the ACC is going to be really good. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just better if I just stay out of it. And so
you're like, people know me as a play-by-play guy, and sometimes it's better if I just lay out. So that's what consider that, which you just like knew the situation. You just lay out.
Right. I knew that you would just take it and run with it and crush it. So.
It's fine. It's all good. Right on. Danny, good to see you as always.
Yeah, same.
And we'll do this. We'll run this back before opening day. We got another one coming your way.
Yeah,
and
that's
right. Weekly after that. So stay locked in. This has been ACC Baseball Etc., part of the D1 Baseball Podcast Network. We'll catch